3,000 years ago, someone wrote a story about a man who just wanted to go home, and somehow it still hasn't finished being relevant. The Odyssey by Homer is one of those books that makes you realize human beings have barely changed. We still long for home. We still get seduced by pride. We still lose ourselves in distraction. We still carry wounds from the battles no one else can see. But here is what surprised me most about this book. This is not really a story about victory. It is not even really a story about adventure. It is a story about exhausting distance between who we became in survival and who we were before the world hardened us. A man stands on the shore after a war that already took too much from him. The sea ahead is endless. The home behind him is gone. And somewhere far away, across storms and monsters and gods who seem to enjoy human suffering as a form of entertainment, someone is waiting. Not because she knows he will return, but because love sometimes survives longer than certainty. That is the strange heartbeat of the Odyssey. And today, over a quiet cup of coffee, let's talk about why a 3,000-year-old poem still feels like it was written about right now. Keep rowing. That's the oldest advice in the world. And somehow, it is still the most honest thing anyone has ever said about surviving a long and difficult journey home. Odyssey is traditionally attributed to Homer, the legendary Greek poet whose name has echoed through literature for thousands of years, like an old bell that refuses to go silent. The poem was written nearly 3 millennia ago, and yet, while reading it, you keep stopping because something feels startlingly familiar. The story follows Odysseus, the king of Ithaca. After the events of the Trojan War, the war is over. The soldiers are returning home. But for Odysseus, home becomes a decade long struggle. A journey through storms, shipwrecks, strange islands, temptations, monsters, loneliness, grief, arrogance, guilt, divine punishment, and the moments where hope survives on almost nothing. You meet unforgettable figures along the way: the Cyclops, the Sirens, Circe, Calypso, Scylla, and Charybdis. And even if you have never read the book, you already know these names. Because his poem becomes the blueprint for almost every adventure story that came after it. Fantasy, hero's journey, psychological epics. So much of the modern storytelling still carries the fingerprints of the Odyssey. But beneath all the mythological spectacle, this is an intensely human story. Odysseus is not perfect. He is clever, brave, manipulative, prideful, vulnerable, patient in some moments, and disastrously impulsive in others, which makes him feel real. The book quietly understands something uncomfortable. Human beings are rarely destroyed by monsters alone. Sometimes we are destroyed by our own inability to stop proving ourselves. That insight is 3,000 years old, and somehow nobody has managed to make it outdated yet. The most beautiful thing about the structure of Odyssey is that it does not unfold like a straight road. It feels like memory, fragments, stories inside stories, sailors retelling disasters under torchlight while wine trembles in the metal cup. And the deeper Odysseus travels into this journey, the more you realize this is not really a geographical story. Each island he encounters feels less like a physical location and more like an emotional state. One island is escapism, the another is ego, another is indulgence, another is despair, and the sea itself becomes symbolic of human uncertainty. Wild, unpredictable, beautiful, cruel. You never fully feel safe, even during the moments of beauty. The sea can change at any second. Life can too. The structure of Odyssey mirrors how we actually experience long, difficult periods of our lives, not as a clean narrative with a clear beginning and end, but as fragments, as episodes that don't connect properly. as moments of progress interrupted by moments of total collapse. Homer understood something about time that modern storytelling often forgets. Journeys don't feel like journeys while you are inside them. The strongest theme in the Odyssey is home, but not home as a physical place, home as identity, home as peace, home as the version of yourself that existed before survival becomes your personality. Odysseus spends years trying to return to Ithaca, but the deeper question slowly becomes what exactly is he returning as? A king? A husband? A warrior? Or simply a tired man who has seen too much in the world? Because sometimes the hardest part of any journey is not reaching the destination. It is learning how to arrive without carrying the entire storm inside you. The second great theme is temptation. And this is where the book feels shockingly modern. Throughout the story, Odysseus repeatedly encounters places where he could simply stop struggling, forget home, forget responsibility, forget the difficult path. The Odyssey understands that the distraction is rarely loud in the beginning. It often arrives softly, comfortably, like a chair that slowly becomes a cage. And a third theme is intelligence over brute strength. And this one surprised me most. Odysseus survives not because he is the strongest man in the world, but because he adapts. He observes. He restrains himself when it is required. He learns timing. There is a very quiet lesson hidden there. Sometimes survival belongs not to the loudest person in the room, but to the one who knows when not to speak. The sirens are not just mythical creatures. They feel like distractions that sing exactly what you want to hear. The Cyclops is not just a monster. Sometimes it feels like arrogance. The storm is not just weather. Sometimes it is grief. That is why the ancient epics survive. Not because of the spectacle alone, but because they smuggle emotional truth inside the impossible stories. What stayed with me most after reading the Odyssey was not the monsters, it was the exhaustion. The emotional exhaustion of carrying responsibility for too long, the exhaustion of trying to stay human while constantly surviving. The Odysseus is celebrated as a hero, yes, but beneath the legend, he often feels like someone simply trying not to disappear inside the journey. And I think many people quietly understand that feeling. There is also something deeply moving about how this book treats patience. These days, modern life worships speed, immediate results, instant arrivals, overnight success, next day delivery. But Odyssey is almost aggressively slow. It reminds you that the meaningful returns take time, sometimes years. Sometimes the entire version of yourself must collapse before you can finally understand where home really is. And strangely enough, despite all the gods and monsters, the book feels emotionally truthful. Because reading the Odyssey feels like standing beside an ancient shoreline at night while someone older than civilization itself tells you you will lose your way many times, but you must keep rowing. And somehow, 3000 years later, that still matters. Home as the version of yourself that existed before survival becomes your personality. That line kept coming back to me long after I finished the book. Because so many people today are in a survival mode, constantly managing, constantly adapting, constantly performing competence. And underneath all of it, a quiet question: who was I before all of this? And can I find my way back home? Should you read the Odyssey? Yes, but with right expectations. This is not a fast read. Its pacing can feel distant at times. Its structure carries the rhythm of oral storytelling rather than the modern novels. There are translations that are more accessible than others. I would recommend starting with Emily Wilson's translation which reads with remarkable clarity and modern emotional directness. But if you surrender to it, if you allow yourself to drift with its tide instead of fighting them, the experience becomes genuinely unforgettable. This is one of those books that shaped the literature so deeply that reading it almost feels archaeological. You are not just reading a story, you are visiting the very roots of storytelling itself. And somewhere between crashing waves, the gods, the sorrow, the longing, and the impossible distance between the war and home, you may end up discovering some pieces of yourself. Like I said in the beginning, just keep rowing. That's the oldest advice in the world. And somehow, standing here 3000 years after someone first wrote it down besides a fire, it still feels like the most honest thing anyone has ever said. And with that, me Nikhil signing off. I will meet you again soon with another book, another quiet conversation, and another cup of coffee. Until then, take care of yourself. If you get some value from this video, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Share this video with a fellow reader and keep turning the page. I thank you very much for your time.